Ready? All right, this is February 13th, 2011, and I'm interviewing my daddy, Maury Dubinsky. And tell us your name, when you were born, and how old you are.
My name is Maurice. They call me Maury Dubinsky. I was born August 6, 1923. I'm 87 right now. In August, I will be 88 years old.
Okay. Tell me where your parents are from and what are their names.
My parents, I'm from the old country on the Polish-Russian border, two small cities. And my father's name was Mendel, and my mother's name was Ida. They called her Kaisora.
Sure. And how old were they when they died?
Don't know exactly because there wasn't good records kept at that time, but they were both in their early 80s.
80s? Okay. When did they come to Kansas City and why?
They came to Kansas City in my father came here in 1914 to evade the war that was coming up in 1914 because he was in the Russian army in 1905 and didn't want to go back in the army. He was a prisoner of war, in fact, in 1905 in Japan. He came here in 1914. My mother came here in 1921.
How old were they?
Well, you have to subtract. I never did that, but
Approximately. Were they in the teenagers or?
no, they were in their 20s and 30s. Yeah.
Okay. What did your folks do here?
My father was a tailor. He opened up a tailor and cleaning shop, and my mother was a housewife until later on, and then she opened up a little grocery store.
Is that the grocery store that you
No,
took over?
No, the grocery. This was at 41st and Prospect. It was more of a fruit stand grocery store.
But you had a grocery store.
That was later on.
Oh, okay. How did the Depression affect your family? Were they considered poor or middle class?
Well,
or
we were considered poor. My mother scrounged to buy groceries on a block down from where we lived. We lived on Admiral Boulevard, and this was on Independence Avenue where all the stores were. And she made $1 last a long way. She got dog bones for the dog we didn't have. She made soup out of it. And
you mean she would tell the butcher she needed dog bones for her dog?
Yeah, and my sisters all lived at the same house with us, and they worked downtown, walked downtown because they didn't want to spend the money for car fare. We were about a mile and a half from downtown. They walked back and forth, and they gave their money to our house too, and household rather, and so we survived that way, I guess. But of course, I was born in 1923, and the Depression came in 1929, so I was 6 or 7 years old, and I didn't know from being poor or being rich. As long as I guess I had something to eat, or we all did. We didn't consider ourselves in poverty, but we used the Alfred Benjamin dispensary on Admiral Boulevard for our immediate health needs. I had my tonsils taken out there, and that was all free.
Okay, you have 4 sisters, one of whom is still living.
My sister Yetta is still living.
And what were their names and how old were they when they died? Do you remember?
Well, let's go with the living one first. That's my sister Yetta Levine, and she lives in Denver, Colorado. Just moved there recently, and she's going to be 104 in April, I think, at 104. And then there was Dorothy, was in her 60s, I don't know exactly, and Sarah and Ida, they were all in their 60s when they passed away.
How your parents didn't drive?
No, my
How,
father didn't drive. My father never owned a car.
how did they get around all the time?
Streetcar.
Streetcar? Was it close to where you lived?
Yeah, streetcars were the immediate type of transportation. Everybody used streetcar. I don't think there was buses at that time. I think they were all streetcars.
Streetcars.
Yeah,
So what it cost to ride a streetcar?
a nickel.
A nickel? So where did you live while you were growing up? Did you move around a lot?
You might say every time the rent came due, we moved. But yeah, we moved around a lot. We never owned a home. We lived on Admiral Boulevard. We lived Midtown, and we lived when we had a house on 42nd and Wabash that the whole family lived in. It was a great big house, and the sisters in those days the children didn't move out of a household until they got married. They just didn't go and get their own apartment, so everybody lived with us until they got married.
So your family always rented a home from someone else?
My folks never owned a home.
Wow. Okay, where did you go to elementary school?
I went to elementary school at Woodland School. Well, I started at Emerson School down, I think it was about 5th and Camel. And then I went to Woodland School. And then when we moved south, I went to Horace Mann. I graduated grade school at Horace Mann School. And I just quipped that when I finished kindergarten, or when I started kindergarten, I couldn't talk English because my parents were from the old country, and they either spoke Russian or Yiddish, and so I wasn't exposed to any English. And all the kids, I lived in an area where it was, you might say, a ghetto, because all of them were refugees from Europe or Italy. We had some Italians live in that area too. So I never learned to speak English until I went to start grade school.
Interesting. Do you still know any Russian? I know you speak a
No,
few
I don't
words
know
of
Russian.
Yiddish.
Well, I know Yiddish. In fact, my parents would talk Russian when they didn't want me to understand anything.
How did your parents learn to speak English?
They went to night school. They both went to night school and both got their citizenship papers
Through that night school?
through the night school.
Okay, where did you go to? Elementary school went through what grade? 6th grade?
Elementary school in those days, I think it was the 7th grade.
And then you went straight to high school?
Went to junior high, Central Junior High on 31st in Indiana. And then that's for 1 year, and then 3 years at high school. Graduated in 1940
From Central?
from Central, 1940.
Okay. So were you a good student?
Yeah, I was a pretty good student, I think. Yeah. I was in ROTC. Seemed like I started my military career
In school?
back there and continued with it. But yeah, I became an officer in their Central ROTC, and was very proud of that. And I think I was a good student. I never made the honor roll, I don't think, but I was a good student.
Yeah. Did you get in any trouble at school? Tell me some stories about school.
No, well, one instance that stands out. Hitler. I was in grade school in the 30s, and the news was full of marches and parades and stuff, and by the Germans, by the Nazis. So me and another guy organized a march, like a Hitler parade in grade school on the grounds, and we got reprimanded for that.
When you were in grade school?
Yeah, we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, but every time you went to the movies, you saw Pathé News and you saw what was going on in Europe.
What was your favorite subject in school?
I think history.
That's probably why you're such a history buff now with the war and everything.
Yeah.
Did you have a lot of friends that you hung out with when you were in school?
Yeah. I had friends. Practically, they're practically all dead. I've got one friend still living in Phoenix, but all my other friends have died.
So did you were they all neighborhood friends? Did you play in the neighborhood?
All the neighborhood, yeah.
So did you play outside and
Yeah.
stickball and all that
Yeah,
kind of stuff?
yeah.
Or What kind of games did you play when you were young?
I played baseball mainly, you know, in a lot, you call it sand lot or something.
Yeah.
And that's about all.
What was the worst thing you did to disobey your parents?
God, I have to think. In those days, I didn't think it was wrong. Probably now it would probably be wrong, but maybe I smoked somewhere out, you know, didn't tell them and smoked a cigarette or something.
And did they find out?
Yeah, you can smell it on your clothes. You know, they found out. I don't
Yeah.
know how they reprimanded me or not. It's just
How did when you did something bad? How did your parents punish you? Did they hit you?
well, they couldn't take much away from me because I didn't have anything. So they just
Did they
shouted
hit you?
at me. Huh?
They shouted at you?
Yeah, shouted at me. I think they did strike me in those days. That wasn't against the law in those days.
Yeah,
I
really.
think they that generation, I think, was whipped if they did something wrong.
Did you have a telephone all through your growing up?
We had a telephone in the house. Yeah, one telephone.
Was it a cranky kind?
Yeah, we had a crank phone, and in fact, when we first moved in that place, that duplex on Admiral Boulevard that I was talking about, we had gas lights.
Gas lights.
Gas lights on the walls that you light, and
Yeah, you had to put fuel in them?
no, there was public gas
Oh.
like it is now, but there was lights, and I think there was a few light bulbs around the house that I don't remember.
Huh. Did your mom cook every night? Did she cook a full meal every night?
Oh yeah, yeah. My mom cooked a meal every night. Sometime on a weekend, later on, there was a kosher restaurant on 8th and Main Street on the second floor, and my folks kept kosher. So for a treat, sometime we would go eat in that restaurant. Probably walk downtown.
A mile and a half to
Yeah,
downtown?
Yeah.
So that was probably the only restaurant you could go to because you kept kosher?
Yeah, my folks kept kosher. I didn't keep kosher. That I knew of. I mean, I didn't pay any attention to it because I didn't go to restaurants anyway. I didn't have any money.
Yeah. So tell me about like your holiday traditions. What'd you do for Seder?
Oh, we had a Seder at our house. And
Was it always at your house?
it was always at our house, and my dad ran the Seder, and it got to the point where my sisters would soon invite their boyfriends to the Seder, and I have pictures of it in my albums of the Seder, but we always had a Seder at our house. Yeah.
How long did it last? Forever?
It seemed like it. Everybody would leave or fall asleep. My dad would still be talking. He'd be talking to nobody, you know, also mostly in Hebrew. My dad was very religious. He wouldn't ride on holidays, so we always had to live close to a synagogue or shul. First time we lived, when I remember growing up, we lived right across the street from a shul called Tracy Shul because it was an Admiral and Tracy. And then when they moved, we moved close to them again because my father wouldn't ride on the holidays or the Sabbath, so we had to be close to a synagogue.
What did you do for Thanksgiving?
I think we may have had a turkey for Thanksgiving. I don't remember Thanksgiving. It got to the point later on, well, of course, my folks won't eat kosher, so they wouldn't be able to go to somebody's house unless they kept kosher. My sisters, when they got married, did keep kosher, so we probably went over to one of their houses after they were married.
What about Hanukkah? Did you exchange presents and have a
we
big
exchanged
celebration?
presents. No, not a big celebration, but I think we lit, you know, the candles on the menorah, but we exchanged something. I don't remember exactly, but I don't remember getting any elaborate gifts for Hanukkah.
Did you eat latkes?
Oh yeah, we had latkes. Yeah, we had the traditional Jewish fair and Jewish holiday prayers and so forth. I think a lot of the celebrating that we do now didn't extend from their European bringing. It was Americanized.
Yeah. How old were you when you learned to drive?
14.
Because you had to work, or was that the legal limit, or?
No, the legal limit I think was still 16. But when we had a little grocery store, we had a Ford pickup truck. That's one of the guys that worked for him. He was a few years older than me. Drove, and he let me go with him, and a couple times he taught me how to drive.
On a stick shift, obviously.
Well, actually, it was a no shift. It was a Ford Model T that didn't have a shift. It was, you did it with your feet. You shifted with a clutch.
Huh.
And there wasn't any shift.
So you learned to drive on that Ford
Model T
truck.
I think it was a car that was the back end was cut off, and they made a kind of a truck out of it.
A do-it-yourself thing.
Yeah.
So when you got your very first car, how old were you, and what was that?
Well, I had to go to work, and I had to go at different hours. I worked at a house trailer company as a welder. I took up welding in school and became a welder, so I had to go different hours, so I had to have a car. So I bought a Chevrolet. I guess it was about a 1935 Chevrolet, and I had a car.
Do you remember how much it cost?
About $600.
Was it new?
No, it wasn't new.
What was your favorite movie? And how much did it cost to go to the movies?
Well, unless I snuck in, we all say everybody snuck in these movies. It probably cost, I think, about a nickel to go to the movie. We had a movie very close to our house when we lived on Alamo Boulevard on 8th Street, and then there was the Murray Theater on 27th Street, and of course we went downtown a lot. Downtown was full of movies, houses and stuff. There wasn't any television. That was our form of entertainment, movies.
So they always had shorts and telling you about what was going on in the world?
Pathé News, telling you what was going on in the world. And that's where I picked up the marching and stuff. You know, there wasn't any television.
Yeah. Do you remember some of your favorite movies growing up?
Oh, I think there probably was Tarzan and the Apes, and
Wizard of Oz?
what?
Wizard of Oz or Gone with the Wind? Those were big in like the 30s.
I remember seeing it, but I don't know if they were my favorite. I never really never was a movie bug. I like the news, and I like to watch whatever was on. Don't forget they were black and white in those days.
Yeah.
There weren't any color movies in those days. They colorized the same movies later on. They put color on the black and white movies.
Right. Right. So you said your first job you became a welder. What other kinds of jobs did you hold?
That was all. I was working in a defense plant. When I was coming home on December 7th, I heard that they had bombed Pearl Harbor. And like all the other American boys, we were all ready to go because we were attacked.
We'll get into the war here in a minute, but tell me, how did you meet Mom?
Well, Mom's aunt was my sister. We weren't related. So we were thrown together at different functions of the family. My sister Dorothy married a fellow by the name of Bill Lipkin, who was
Mom's uncle.
An uncle, was a brother to my mother-in-law. And it's going to get mixed up here, but that's how I met her. We were just kids. I used to take her riding on my bicycle.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a car, but that's how I met her.
And how much younger was she than you? You were born in 23 and she was born in 26
6, I think.
or 27.
Yeah. So 3 years.
And so if you were just kids together, obviously it wasn't love at first sight or anything.
No, we were
You
just
just grew
kids.
to-
I don't remember how old we were, but we were just kids. And of course, we didn't even live close together. But when I didn't see her, I missed her, I guess, and came and got her on a bicycle or something. I don't remember.
So you didn't have a quote first date that you remember?
No, I didn't have a first date. We just grew up together, and I think she was the only girl I dated before I went in the service.
And you got married after the service?
After the war, I was still in the Navy.
Right, but I mean, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I got married. Her mother wouldn't let her get married till after the war. The war ended in September. I got home in December from overseas, and we got married in December of '45.
Okay. And so tell me, you went into the Navy when the war started. And
Yeah, I went into the Navy. I enlisted in the Navy in October of '42 and was sworn in. And I wanted to become a pilot because I saw advertisements, join the Navy, become a pilot and all that. And I knew I've never been on an airplane. I don't think I've ever saw an airplane, but so I enjoyed it, and I enlisted in the Navy, what they call a V5 program, where if you didn't finish college, they send you to college to become a naval aviator.
So where'd they send you to college?
Ottawa University.
And that's where you learned all your...
Well, I learned to fly there. A little plane, and we went to school practically 24 hours a day. It was only a few miles from Kansas City. We never got to leave or anything. So I started out of university with a lot of ground school and athletics.
What did your parents say when you decided to go to the war?
Well, of course, I mean, my mother and father, were I guess glad to see me enlist because we were fighting an enemy that everybody was actually an enemy between Germany and Japan, but they were worried. I mean, I know my mother was worried all the time about me being gone.
I don't blame her. I
Yeah.
would be too.
Yeah, and didn't get much leave. I came home a couple of times before I went overseas, but she was, I know, was concerned. I've got a picture of my mother and I together, and it's one of the best pictures I've had from the war, where I came home on leave and standing next to her outside her apartment building, and you could see her the gleam in her face and her
Where is
eyes.
that picture?
It's hanging down in
Is it in your office?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you, it seems to me like I remember when you enlisted, you were too skinny and maybe too young or something?
Yeah, we went into this program where you had to, where they were going to make an aviator out of you, and I had to get permission. I had to have my mother sign some papers because I was 19 at the time, and I guess you had to sign something, and I had to have some teeth filled and gain 3 pounds. They told me to go home and eat bananas and have the teeth filled because they didn't want to take me on with any medical obligations. So they wanted me to have all my dental work and everything done. So I did that and gained 8 bananas constantly until I gained that. I think it was 3 pounds. I don't know. And I passed the physical and the mental exam.
Well, that's lucky.
Well, that's right, because most of the people, only about half that applied for it got into the
Really? Because of a mental exam or the physical?
mental and physical both, and your attitude and everything else. That you went through a examination from so many people, and then of course, getting ahead of myself, of the people that did get in enlisted, less than 50% became pilots.
Huh. So that was a rigorous training.
Oh,
so
the
you
most rigorous training of all the services. They
tell
realize
us
it
a
now.
little bit about that.
And well, we went to from Ottawa University. We went to St. Mary's College in California, which was no flying, just all ground school and athletics mainly. And you had to do things that were just absolutely, I don't know how to say it. I mean, you couldn't like trying to kill somebody. You had to fight for life. They pick out a guy your size and you try to kill him.
Wow.
The only thing that wouldn't go was gouging your eyes. And they didn't grade you
You mean like hand-to-hand combat? You tried to kill?
hand-to-hand combat. But that was started a long time ago. And we tried to kill each other. And your best friend. And it's not that they wouldn't let you kill somebody, but if you didn't fight hard, they'd let you keep fighting. So you had to fight hard, and then they'd stop it maybe in 3 or 4 minutes. You know,
Wow.
Everything went.
So everybody's bloodied?
Yeah, bloody, everything. And people got washed out there. They got washed out. You had a major sport that you had to do, and one was track, and I had shin splints, so they gave you things to do that you couldn't possibly do easily. And I used to crawl across the finish line. As long as you finished, that would count, not how fast you did it.
Really?
But my legs would give out because I had shin splints.
Huh.
And I'd have to crawl across the finish line.
But
And,
you were that determined to get in that
yeah,
you wanted to do it.
And it would, and all kind of things beside, well, we used to have an obstacle course that was so bad that I ate breakfast in the morning, run the obstacle course every morning, and vomit up my breakfast. It was so rigorous. But
Your fingers?